Hello everybody and welcome back to the damn sofa. That's the sofa, and our shady sidekick is actually curled up on the damn sofa. Not this damn sofa, the real damn sofa out in the living room that Matt is on right now. And so Roscoe's keeping him company. He does not want to be a TV dog. Anyways, I hope everybody's doing well out there. I greatly appreciate all of you for gathering around the sofa. Now today we are going to be we're going to be visiting the next installment. We are reading through Chad Daybell's One Foot in the Grave. So I did one of them. Y'all were like, please keep them coming. So yes. So this is kind of what I decided I'm going to do. I have not read through this book, so it's kind of like a fresh thing for me. So I'm going to go through it just so like my reactions to it can be kind of like, you know, spontaneous or whatever. It's a total cringe fest, number one. So I will say this, like I if you know me, I ad lib, I'll joke around and stuff like that. So this is not going to be a traditional just read through the book type situation. It's frankly, you know, I don't believe much of anything that's in here. I do think that it's a bunch of lies and whatnot, and it's just very grandiose, but we do see a glimpse into probably the way that he works and thinks and whatnot. So that's it. And also, heads up, I haven't been putting out a ton of stuff lately. Everything's well. Thank you for those who've reached out. Summertime gets really busy for me at work. Good news is that this summer isn't going to be super crazy, but there's like patches of it. And since April 1st, today is, April 9th, it has been insane, y'all. And it's going to slow down here in about a week or so, but then we're going to get ready for CrimeCon. So they came out with a list today. We'll be talking about it. Anyways, I'm going on and on. The point of all this is to say, more videos will be coming out soon. Don't forget to check out my podcasting channel where I'll put up like little quicker updates, things of that nature. And also thank you to everyone who makes this channel possible. I could not be here without you. I greatly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I love you, Sofa Squad. Now let's go ahead and jump on into it. So I'm going to start with chapter 3. We're just going to run until my card basically fills up for one session, if you will, because that just makes it easier for me to go through and edit during these unprecedented times, these busy times. Anyways, so here we go. So the name of chapter 3 is Graveyard Do's and Don'ts. Although you'll find some tongue-in-cheek humor in this book, I want to make it clear I have a deep respect for cemeteries and their occupants. It angers me to see people act disrespectful in the cemetery. Pause. I cannot believe I'm reading this. I mean, now it's not like he wrote this yesterday, right? Like this is older, but still, I'm like, seriously. I mean, I'm just like, are you kidding me? Anyways, as sexton, I saw nearly everything over the years, and I've seen proper and improper cemetery etiquette. Let's go through a few examples. The first should be obvious. Don't remove your clothing at funerals. One poor drunk soul drove his Chevy truck over a cliff, and his funeral was attended by several men who lacked proper cemetery etiquette. As soon as the service was over, these guys removed their shirts and began blasting heavy metal music from their trucks. 3 of them pulled cold beers from a cooler in their truck, which seemed very insensitive considering how the young man had died. A scuffle even broke out among them over the last beer. The dead man's family quickly left, obviously shocked at the group's behavior. Thankfully, the group's girlfriends refrained from also going topless, but I kept the police department's phone number handy, just in case. I hope the deceased man enjoyed his very noisy, inappropriate send-off. I mean, that's it. That's literally it. I mean, I'm not saying that's chapter 3, but like that was that story. Do we believe it? No. And again, it's hard to read this now, knowing what we know, right? Like we can't take advice from him about how to handle yourself in a cemetery. Anyways, the next one is, don't smoke until the service is over. If at all possible, hold off lighting up your cigarette until you're leaving the cemetery. I've seen people get pretty irritated when the person next to them starts puffing away during the graveside service. If you need to smoke that badly, please stand several yards away from the group. Also, it would be nice if you deposited your cigarette butt in a nearby garbage can. It makes me feel a bit sad when there are more cigarette butts near a new grave than flowers. That happened many times. Again, why was there even a need for that? I mean, this is common sense 101. Like, why even write this? Anyways, the next one. Don't yell at the sexton if you're upset. Many people feel that shouting to the sexton is productive. This is not true. I don't need to explain my feelings toward a man who cursed at me for 5 minutes because an employee trimmed the rose bush on his wife's grave slightly shorter than he preferred. After such treatment, I seriously considered pruning the man's rose bush to ground level. I understand that people get emotionally attached to a gravesite, but that man went overboard. Of course, on the other hand, do bring the sexton a pizza. I mean, I just cannot. Okay, y'all. I can't. It's so cheesy. Okay, here we go. Sorry. One wise lady sent me a Pizza Hut medium supreme for keeping an eye on things. You can be sure I kept a close eye on her son's burial plot after that. I even went out of my way to brush grass clippings off the headstone when I went past it. That generous lady followed up that initial offering every few months with peanut brittle, chocolate, and so on. Obviously, when she had a concern, I immediately hurried to resolve it. I mean, seriously, this guy is so cheesy. Another visitor gave me a box of chocolates for raising a low spot in the sod near his wife's grave, and I paid extra attention to his plot for as long as I worked there. One family always slipped a Christmas card under my door. Who would have thought of giving the sexton a holiday card? It was truly appreciated. Maybe Hallmark can start a new category. Yeah. I'm not advocating bribery, but showing a little kindness might pay big dividends for you. Besides, your sexton might appear to be an illiterate blue-collar guy, but he could be secretly writing a book about you. I mean, y'all, I can't. I don't know if this is true or not. It's almost like if he made it up, it's cringy, and it's like, what? And then if it is true, I'm like, dude, you're so cheesy. I mean, it's just like these people are doing. I mean, absolutely. I think in a normal situation, take chat out of it. It's like, well, it's nice if people want to do that. Like if someone's like, you know, you really made me feel good. You've been tending after the gravesite, whatever. But the fact that it's like, oh, well, they did this, so I'm going to make sure to do blank. I mean, it's just, I mean, it seems so tacky. It seems in such bad taste to discuss this, right? Like, again, I'm just like, who, you know how memes these days are like, no one, absolutely no one. But then the result is this book. I'm like, nobody asked for this. I can assure you I mean, this is so bizarre. And then to hear these things like, well, if you bring like Pizza Hut, and you know he would have responded well to like alcohol, right? You know what I'm saying? Anyways, let's keep going. Okay. Don't betray the sexton's trust. I was always eager to help cemetery visitors, but I grew more wary after the following incident. One afternoon, a lady came to the cemetery office and we located her ancestors' graves. She thanked me profusely for helping her out. I didn't see her again for a few months until she flagged me down and said she had recently wrecked her car on a road near the cemetery. She told me the situation and I sympathized with her. Then she went on her way and I thought I'd never see her again. The next day I received a visit from the city manager saying this woman had come to City Hall, claiming I would testify on her behalf. She said the city was negligent in its road construction and should pay for her car's damage. This left me stunned, and I quickly told him, here's my side of the story. He thanked me, and then he returned to his office. Within an hour, the woman pulled up at my office in a rental car. She jumped out and shouted profanities at me before stomping away. Her final words were, I thought you were a nice person, but I guess I was wrong. I still shake my head over that one. And no, the city didn't pay for her damaged car. Do obey the posted signs. Most cemetery post signs that state, no playing sports, no dogs allowed. It is amazing how many people think these signs don't apply to them. One of the hardest calls to the police I made was when an old high school classmate started bringing his dog to the cemetery each morning. He would let his dog out of the gate, then speed his car through the cemetery to make his dog chase the car. This presumably gave the dog some exercise. Now here's my thing. I've always just been paranoid about this. I do know that I've seen some people do this kind of thing, maybe not through a cemetery. And I'm always like, oh my God, what if you accidentally ran over the dog? Anyway, side note. So let's keep going. After the third day of this routine, I finally called the police and asked them to have an officer wait at the cemetery's bottom gate the next morning at 7 a.m. Sure enough, the pattern was repeated, and my classmate nearly ruined his tires as he squealed to a stop in front of the police car. The speeding ticket and the dog without a leash warning were enough to stop the daily dog exercise. Interestingly, my classmate never mentioned his ticket to me, and he probably doesn't realize I had part in it. He will now. I mean, what a creep. I mean, here's the thing too, so pause. This is the level that these people, when I say these, I'm talking about Chad and this crowd that's doing this little self-publish, blowing smoke up each other's butts. They literally think they're famous, right? Like, Chad thinks he is famous, okay? Right, wrong, or indifferent about the dog situation. I mean, just that line right there. He didn't know I had something to do with it, but he will now. If he read your little self-published book that, you peddled off to a few people at a house party. Okay, anyways. So, let's continue. I usually ignored the occasional kids in the cemetery flying kites or playing catch with a near football, but I always stopped full-fledged football and baseball games. The cemetery's open grass is alluring to young competitors, but a field dotted with headstones just isn't the place for bone-jarring tackles or ricocheting line drives. Again, this is a man who we know who did what he did now. So high and mighty years ago, but yet look at what was in his own damn backyard, what he was willing to do. I wonder what his classmate thinks now. Pardon me. Okay, here we go. The next one. Don't thank the sexton by ruining his life. Oh God, here we go with the martyr. Okay. This strange series of events began one autumn day when my crew and I disinterred a woman who... I might have said that wrong. A woman whose family wanted her reburied in another town. After the vault guy hauled the body and headstone away, we refilled the now empty hole and put the sod back into place. 2 weeks later, a stone guy brought a different woman's headstone to the cemetery. He checked his work order, read the burial site as plot number 152, and put the headstone bloop on his now empty grave. He can hardly be faulted, since it appeared to be a fresh grave. A large winter storm hit the following day, and a new headstone was soon covered with snow for a few months. The following spring, I noticed the headstone was in the wrong place. As I checked it out, the stone should have been placed in plot number 251 instead of 152. The two spots are nearly 200 yards apart, and I was surprised the family hadn't brought this error to my attention. The deceased woman had an unusual surname, and I tried to contact anyone in the phone book with that same name, but she didn't seem to have any relatives in the area. After 2 days of deliberation, I decided to correct the error by moving the headstone to its proper location. Well, what a shock. What a shocking solution. Okay, naturally the change was noticed within a day by the dead woman's distant relatives. By that afternoon, I had a large group of people outside my office demanding an explanation. They were certain I had moved their relative's body without permission. I explained that the body hadn't moved an inch since the burial, but these people repeatedly called me a liar, claiming there was a conspiracy. The family then called the mayor and the local newspaper, saying the city was moving bodies around without notifying families and were possibly selling the body parts. They demanded I be fired immediately. Of course, I had never moved the body, which had rested peacefully in plot number 251 all winter. All I did was put the headstone where it belonged. As this strange controversy swirled around me, I asked their family spokesman this question: if you paid for the headstone, didn't you ever wonder where it was? He promptly responded, "Oh, we knew where it was, and we even visited it several times, you son of a bitch." Son of a bitch. You should have, though. Okay, he said the part about we visited it several times, though. Okay, I then asked, "Didn't it ever feel like it was in the wrong place? You attend the funeral, didn't you? The two sites are nowhere near each other." "Well, we've had a big fight going on in the family about that," he said. "Then why didn't you contact the city and find the right spot?" I asked. He glared at me and said, "Because the city workers are a bunch of bumbling liars who move bodies around." At that moment, I just walked away. The mayor and the city council soon realized what kind of people they were dealing with, and my job was never really in jeopardy. However, the city did make an unusual request. They asked me to publicly apologize to the family for putting the headstone in the right place. Such is life. Again, I mean, if somebody has proof of this with newspapers and stuff like that, I'll believe it. I just think he tries to make... He is literally glorifying this position. I mean, you would think he is the man behind the curtain. You would think he holds the damn town keys. I'm just like, I have a feeling he probably spent his days drunk digging up graves. Anyways. Do ask the sexton for help locating a grave. That story leads to this obvious point. You might remember Aunt Ethel's funeral like it was yesterday. But the cemetery is constantly changing with the new headstones being added, trees getting taller, and so forth. So I've always watched for people who were wandering aimlessly through the cemetery, because it was a good sign they were looking for a relative's grave, you think. And, where is it? These people often weren't within 50 yards of the burial site, and they were sometimes in a completely different section of the cemetery. Most cemetery employees are eager to help you out if you approach them kindly, and it will save you many hours of frustrated searching, but he makes it sound like you need to come up with a damn pizza and chocolates and stuff. Anyways. Don't read in the cemetery at night. I mean, I don't know who wrote these headers for him, but I mean, we're talking, this is some good work here. Okay, one curious complaint came after my crew and I readjusted the floodlight that shined on our American flag. The light had slipped a bit over the years and had been shining in the eyes of drivers on the nearby highway. The day after we fixed it, a man came into my office asking me to lower the light again. I explained it was now in the proper position. He stammered and frowned, then finally said, "Well, maybe this will put a stop to it." I asked him what he meant, and he said, "When my wife can't sleep, she'll drive out here in the middle of the night and read out loud to our daughter who is buried here. But she couldn't see the pages last night and asked me to come talk to you." He paused as if hearing what he was asking for the first time. He then mumbled sorry and quickly left the office. I didn't readjust the light. I mean, it's just, I mean, again, I don't believe this stuff, but I mean, so it's like he tells us like he's attempting to do a heartfelt thing, but then he's like, I didn't readjust the light. I mean, does he want to come off? It's like this obsession with power is another thing that comes through here. And what was the title? Don't read in the cemetery at night. So he doesn't want her to do that. Could I see someone doing that? Possibly, yes. That makes sense, and it's sad and it's heartbreaking sounding, right? I have many other questions though. Why would you go talk to them about doing that? Why not bring a flashlight with you? There's lots of other things that I would think of before. Go ask them to change the floodlight. I mean, I don't know. That doesn't... Again, you see where there's like the holes in the story? Anyways, the next section. Don't ask me to work the graveyard shift. Since I lived in a small town, many people knew what I did for a living. Most of them knew I was a total loser. I'm kidding, he didn't say that part. He didn't say that part. Okay, so here we go. Since I lived in a small town, most people knew what I did for a living, and some of them had no problem calling me as late as 10 p.m. to complain about something. I kept hoping they would realize I didn't do much work out there after dark. I usually politely said, thanks for calling and I'll check on that in the morning, but in the future... Just leave a message at my damn office. They seemed stunned when I didn't say I would get out there and fix it right now. I mean, he's bitter. He's bitter, y'all. I mean, just a saucy queen. Okay, next section. Go pay attention to the guy directing traffic. If you see a guy standing at the cemetery gate frantically waving his arms, it is usually wise to stop. He might be wearing a hat and dirty Levi's, but he is possibly the only one in the cemetery who knows what's going on. Again, it's like he's just this level of self-importance that he tries to do. And you can see how when he started coming up and like doing these books and getting some people following him and paying attention to him and all that, I mean, this man thought he was God himself and all his disciples or whatever he believed in. Okay. I'll never forget when 2 funerals came to the cemetery at the same time and actually merged at the gate. As fate would have it, very few consecutive cars were going to the same funeral. I tried to stop each car and direct them to the right funeral, but most drivers would ignore me and they just sped through the cemetery to the wrong burial. It took nearly 20 minutes to sort things out and get the mourners where they belonged. It was really exciting when a mortician spotted the wrong grave, ignored my wild arm motions, and led the entire procession to the wrong graveside. That's when I acted like a high hurdler by leaping over headstones in a dash across the cemetery to correct the problem before too many people got out of their cars. Next section. Don't expect to borrow electricity. I enjoy the holidays just like everyone else, but one family consider me to be Ebenezer Scrooge. Every December they beg me to let them run an extension cord from my office to light a Christmas tree on their relative's grave. I continually refused, so they eventually took the request to the damn mayor, who supported my decision. The mayor told the family the city can't afford to light everyone's cemetery decorations. Frankly, the last thing I needed to worry about during a winter storm was hitting extension cords when I plowed snow from the roads. What will people want to do next on the holidays? Fireworks for the dead on the 4th of July? Oh, I forgot. That happened too. I mean, another thing that's, again, so if even some of this is true or whatever, look at how, I mean, again, if anyone knows out there, look at how much stuff he claims goes to the mayor. Like, he's the next stop below the mayor, right? Well, I said no, and then they went right to the mayor. I'm like, is there not a manager at the damn cemetery? I don't know how it works. I speak to the manager at the damn cemetery. Maybe he is a manager. I don't know, but I'm just like, is there not, like, a manager or someone above? He acts like it's like the hierarchy in the world is like him, the mayor, the president, God, right? And I mean, and now it's just like, he's all of those, right? But I'm just like, it blows my mind. Pardon me. My mouth is getting dry. Anyways, let's keep going. Okay, the next one is don't move previously buried bodies. Even after retiring, this is still my greatest pet peeve, and he really did write that. Cannot with this. My worst experience in the cemetery came when family members decided to reorganize their burial plots after some family members are already in the ground. I firmly believe in the phrase, rest in peace. Oh my God. I mean, no, absolutely not. This is absolutely insane. Okay, he says, I cannot emphasize strongly enough that digging up your relative is a horrible idea. Should we even read further? The proper thing to do as a family is to plan ahead where everyone will be buried. If one of your children dies, you likely will buy 3 lots. I advise you not to bury the child in the middle because most likely you'll eventually wish you hadn't. That's exactly what happened in the following disturbing story. Here we go. God knows, pull up. In 1954, maybe I should turn more this way. I'm sorry. In 1954, a family lost a teenage son named Ray, and they followed the bury him in the middle routine so that each parent could be buried next to him. Well, Ray's mother died in the 1970s, and by the time his father died in 1990, any sentiment for Ray from the rest of the family was long gone. They barely remembered him. The remaining siblings naturally wanted their parents buried next to each other, and in their minds the solution was simple. They'd just pay some extra money to move Ray over one spot and then put Dad where Ray had been. It sounds so easy, doesn't it? Well, we dug down to Ray's vault and discovered it wasn't really a vault at all. In the 1950s, a vault often consisted of either cinder blocks or thin slabs of concrete stacked like a house of cards, and that's how Ray's vault was. We stopped our digging operation and called the family to explain that things could get messy really fast. They didn't care, though. They told us to just get it done. We resumed our task and carefully removed the top slabs of the vault, exposing Ray's wooden casket. We now knew the rest of the vault would just collapse if we tried to move it, so we brought in a new vault and set it along the edge of the grave. Our goal was to carefully lift Ray's casket into the new vault. We climbed down into the hole and grabbed the casket handles to lift it out. But those ancient handles snapped right in our hands. We noticed the casket was pretty moist, and I said, "This thing's gonna fall apart on us." We had to proceed, though, and we finally put several straps around the casket and hoped for the best. We used the vault's truck wrench to slowly lift the casket, and we kept our fingers crossed that this casket reached ground level. Sadly, that's the last time poor Ray was in one piece. The casket sides crumbled in and the whole thing imploded, like when they knocked down one of those old Las Vegas hotels. Suddenly, various parts of Ray were falling back into the hole in a different order than he would have preferred. I did notice he'd been buried in a nice brown suit, though. I will refrain from describing exactly how we eventually got Ray's body into the new vault, but let's just say it required snow shovels. Again. We know he has no respect for the dead or the damn living, in that matter. So he probably did whatever he had to. I hope Ray has some strong words for his siblings when they someday meet on the other side. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? Don't trust Pamela. You'll understand why is the next section, so we're going to read it. In a similar situation, a family's infant son had been buried in the center plot, and the father had been buried beside him many years earlier. Now the mother had died, and the same clamor erupted to have mom and dad next to each other. All of the remaining 5 children met me at the gravesite, and they tried to convince me there was plenty of room to squeeze mom next to her husband without disturbing their long-dead brother. I had checked the maps and records, and I strongly disagreed with them, but they wanted me to go ahead with it. I asked why they were so sure I wouldn't hit the baby's coffin when digging the grave, and they all glanced in the direction of their youngest sister, a frightening little waif with a fake diamond stud in her nose. One of the brothers leaned toward me and whispered, "Our sister Pamela is psychic. She can see the vaults underground and says everything will be fine. She says the baby's vault is on the far side." Well, Pamela ought to buy a tape measure, because when we dug up the grave next morning, I hit her brother's coffin with my 4th scoop with the backhoe. There wasn't even a burial vault despite the girl's claims. And the coffin was right in the middle of the plot, as I knew it would be. Of course, he knows everything, right? Of course he knew that. Even worse, I had clipped off the top of the coffin, and I could see the infant's body inside. I jumped into the hole, and my coworker and I carefully replaced the splintered part and moved the little coffin onto the grass. I resumed digging the grave, but I was absolutely fuming. I don't think I've ever been more angry at a family because I couldn't get that little baby's face out of my mind. I don't believe it for a second. If that really happened, I do not believe he had that emotion. We finally decided to dig the grave about 7 feet deep, and then we reburied the baby at that level. His mother was buried the next day, a foot or so above him. I stayed in my office when that funeral arrived because I was afraid I would say something rude to the family. I found it curious that none of the family members ever inquired whether we had hit the baby's coffin. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. After all, Pamela saw what is best for them. Bitter queen. Bitter to the damn core she is. Okay. Don't ride on the cemetery's dirt piles. A tradition among the local teenagers was to ride their motorcycles on our cemetery's dirt piles. I used to call the police when bikers would show up, but the officers would never get there in time before the kids sped away. These riders knew better than to come during a funeral, or so I thought. One day we held a funeral for an old lady near the dirt piles, and it was a quiet, somber occasion. Then I heard a motorcycle engine revving up the far side of the dirt piles. I hurried in that direction, hoping to avoid the inevitable. I didn't make it in time. Maybe the kid never even noticed the funeral before he jumped, but it was amazing to see him soar off the dirt pile and land within 20 feet of several older ladies just as the graveside prayer ended. It would have been a perfect fit for Evel Knievel's funeral, but it wasn't for Gladys Ripple's service. I don't know why that tickled me. Her family was not amused, and they made sure I knew it. Okay, the next one is don't call the cops about your headstone. As I mentioned in the previous story, cops aren't too good at catching bad guys in the cemetery. I mean, my God. I mean, it literally just writes itself. So I've never understood why people call the police when their headstone is tipped over. Yes, it is a crime, but it is also a waste of the policeman's time. What's he going to do? Dust for fingerprints? The best solution is to tell the sexton about it, and he'll let the mayor know. I'm just joking. It doesn't say the mayor thing, but you would think it would. The best solution is to tell the sexton about it. Despite popular belief, a tipped-over headstone is rarely broken. It just needs to be put back on its base. The main reason to not call the police, though, is because the incident has an unusual angle, and it usually ends up in the newspaper police report. Okay, wait, hold on. The main reason to not call the police, is because the incident has an unusual angle, and it usually ends up in the newspaper police report. So within a week, there will be copycat crimes where even more headstones are knocked over. Does that, let me know, that makes no sense to me. Are they trying to say it has an unusual angle, like it was a different kind of story, and so they'll put it out there? And then they'll have copycat crimes. In a nearby town, a few headstones were knocked over in their cemetery, and a citizen called the newspaper. That wasn't a wise decision, though. The media blew the story out of proportion, and the story when it died down. Naturally, there were 2 copycat incidents within a week, and suddenly the poor cemetery sexton was on TV promising to stop this crime spree. The self-importance, I cannot. And I actually got calls from the local media seeking my comments on the situation. I'm sure he did. Can someone please confirm if any of this stuff is true? I would love to know. Okay, so anyways, that cemetery had vandalism problems for several months, and it was all linked back to those newspaper reports. It was like telling teenagers, are you feeling bored? Or remember the cemetery? Come on over and let's cause some problems. The main reason I prefer to just put the headstones back in place is because news articles on the subject usually include a photo of the cemetery workers grunting and squatting to lift a toppled stone. Of course, this type of work usually causes the workers to unintentionally show what is known in the blue-collar world as plumber's crack. We all know that's not a pretty picture, especially in the newspaper. Y'all, the links that he went to try and set that up, I think this might be a joke or an attempt at one. And the links that he's going to, I'm like, there's no way. Like, there's so many dots to connect that a teenager would not waste their time. Maybe this is a different time, though, of being like, hey, I know what we'll do. We'll go tip the stones over, and then they'll take pictures of them putting it up, and we'll see the plumber's crack. I can see a teenager tipping the stones over, but again, this is bad, y'all. This is really bad. I mean, this is really, 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 really bad. Really bad, okay? So, look, that's all I'm going to read for today, because that was a long chapter, okay? This was like over, I don't know, for like 30 minutes. I'll see when the video gets edited down some. But I just can't anymore today. So we're going to cut this one off here today. And so this will be this. And that's it. We'll start at chapter 4 next time. Hopefully it's not. I thought this was going to be much shorter because it's easier. And again, if I'm not as busy at work, I can do multiple chapters. But I went through 1 through 3 in the first video because I was like, chapter 4 is, it's, I don't know. We'll see. So, anyways, that's it. Thank you again for everybody for making this channel possible. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for going through this book. I literally could not read. I have been curious to go through this, but there's no way I could just read this normally because it pisses me off, number 1. Number 2, it's absolutely absurd rubbish, okay? If anyone has any proof that any of these stories are true, drop in the comments or email me. All that's down below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, my other channel. And don't forget to have a sofa kind of a damn day. Until we meet back again at that sofa, I'll see you soon, Sofa Squad.